ultra sheltered. Like my story, like if anyone remembers Gilligan's Island, I wasn't allowed to watch Gilligan's Island. Okay, so you're too young probably to know Gilligan's Island. You know Gilligan's Island. But you know, like you're talking about an ultra conservative Catholic girl suddenly living with heroin addicts, mental health, day and night crises, drama, trauma. But in the midst of all that, we had a really solid prayer life. 2 hours charismatic praise and worship, 1 hour's Eucharistic adoration, daily Mass. This was we were in it for Jesus, and we were giving up our lives. And so this is sort of the foundations of how we began. Really raw, really messy. I was just talking today about some of the mistakes we've made along the way, and it's a very humbling journey because lots of mistakes and so on, but lots of precious life experiences. And at this point, I will say one little bit before I go on about the streets, and that is that my biggest passion is that every one of us is a missionary. Every one of us has a call from God. And I say this, my kids are sick of me. Because then when I was 37, I got married. And I've got 3 teenage children now, right? Good on you. You pray for them. So, 3 teenage children. But I tell them all the time, you have a unique mission, purpose and destiny. And I wish everyone would awaken to that knowing that there isn't another Anne in the world, and there isn't another Anne that can fulfill the unique. Each one of us is a missionary. I went to one church and they had this poster as you left the car park. You are now entering your mission field. It doesn't matter. We've got this box of missionary, pack your bags and go off to Africa. Yes. That's the box we have, It's not true. In our homes, in our work spheres, we are all missionaries. There is a fire. And my favorite quote is Saint Catherine of Siena, I think it's her. Anyway, but the quote is, become who God created you to be and set this world on fire. So I'm really passionate about that, and I can talk for hours about that, so I won't, okay? Holy Spirit of Freedom over the years has evolved a lot, and today, like here in Perth, we're a small community, and most of our members, in fact all of them, except for me probably, have employment, have work, have their own families. There's no longer members that, have literally given up jobs and everything at this point in time. But people that are called onto the streets have a heart for the people on the streets, and we encourage people to experience that world. Always prayer is the foundation of everything, because at the end of the day, our whole heart is this is a work from God, and we're wanting to be in tune with His Spirit. Lord, you show us. We're dealing with situations and circumstances. We don't know how to help. A lot of times, here in Perth, and it's interesting because Mother Teresa actually said this. She said, it's a lot harder to see Jesus it's a lot easier to see Jesus in a dying person on the streets of Calcutta than to see Jesus in an alcoholic here in Australia that's abusing you. It's a very different poverty. And when I talk about the street world, I'm talking about it is a different world. It is a different world. My husband works with Day Dawn, which is a Catholic Aboriginal advocacy centre. And, when you talk about our Indigenous brothers and sisters, it's the crisis is the level of trauma, what they live through, the ones that, struggle the most. It is another world. It is another culture, another reality where the normal conversation is about who suicided lately, who got murdered, who got raped, that's just normal life. And on the streets, I know I need to go for myself. I think Mother Teresa, again, she said that. She said, she said we need, she uses the term the poor more than they need us. And I think over the years I've come to realise that I need the people that have taught me the most, that have challenged me the most, that have other relationships that I've got really deep with people. and have really challenged my boxes, and in very colourful language, which I won't repeat, but really forced me to, really push me outside my comfort zones, really push me to have to go deeper into who am I and who is this Jesus, and forced me to grow in my walk with God and in my and so I mean, I guess as far as on the streets, we go out, we have a routine. At the moment we're going out every Tuesday night and every Saturday night here in Perth, and we have a routine where each night is different. First, prayer first, but like Tuesday nights, which is when I usually go, there's a street doctor with services, there's like a laundry service, there's a food service, there's a shower service, and we will meet there, and we always we take out tea and coffee, but it's not, our whole thing is not to be a food service, it's more like an icebreaker. If I want to catch up with you, let's catch up over a cup of coffee. It's a bit more comfortable than, you know, so and so that's why we take out the tea and coffee. And then after there we end up at, do you know the Wesley Church opposite the 24-hour McDonald's, corner of Hay Street and William Street? So there's a church, an old church there.
Yeah, in the corner.
Yes, right in the corner there. So we're there, and outside there, and people know where we'll be, and they come to us. They come to us, and so often here in Perth, there's a lot of mental illness, and really chronic, really. We've usually got 3 or 4 people talking to themselves around us. It's an epidemic, whether and they're getting younger, and you know, I'll sit and have conversations with people that I don't understand a word of what, you know, is what, but I believe in the power of love. And the love of Jesus, and that every human being is created in the image of Christ. And in a way, again, in our Australian culture, in our Western culture, the most precious thing we can give is not money, time. We're a time-starved society. That's why I said loneliness. It's like we don't have time for one another. We're losing the capacity for human connection. So I think, because, I mean, I'm the talker, as you may have noticed, but my husband's the doer, okay? So he's the doer. He's there every Saturday night, and they call him Pastor Mark. He's not a pastor, but we've tried to argue the point and we've given up. Okay, he's Pastor Mark out there. And I think what's spoken the most he's very well known on the streets and in that street world, is he's been there every Saturday night, rain, hail, or shine, for 25 years. Yeah, probably 25 years. Mark's there Saturday night, and what's that saying? That's saying, you matter to me. You're worth it. You're significant. You know, I'm willing to give up everything else because I want to spend time with you. I want to hear your story. I want to know your heart, what makes you tick, what, you know, and I once had an image from the Lord about, I look at our Western culture like a freeway, and you know when you're driving on the freeway, you're driving fast, and you've got to concentrate, to keep up, to be safe. And you might see someone broken down on the side of the road, but it's almost dangerous to stop. It's almost dangerous. And then if you stop, it's really hard to get back on. And in a way, I see that what our Western culture is like we're moving fast, and all our energy is going into just keeping up with our commitments and our responsibilities. And we might notice that there's actually humanity, someone broken down on the side of the road, but I haven't got time, I'm rushing here, I've got this responsibility, I've got this, you know, and what I felt the Lord saying to me, but there's an ocean of humanity that's actually on the city with nowhere to go, nothing to do, and nothing, nothing. And He is longing for a people that will get off that freeway, whatever that means, you know, whatever that means. I'm not talking about giving up everything to follow Jesus, but get off that freeway and take the risk in our poverty of actually making our home in their midst, and actually loving in their pain. And it's hard because it's very confronting. It's very, it's hard. I mean, one of my closest, she's like a spiritual daughter. I met her when she was 14 on the streets. She's now 44. I've known her children since they were born, and it's like this lady had a serious mental health issues, very violent. When her name was called on the police, it was 3 police cars would turn up, been in jail for stabbing, been in jail for, a very colourful criminal record, and constantly Jesus challenging me, perfect love casts out fear. I constantly had to make a decision. Will I allow my fear, which I was scared of her, I'll be honest, control me, or will I choose to love? Was it easy? No. But that call to love and to keep loving. I again, Mother Teresa also says kindness is a universal language, and sometimes I spend all Tuesday night just with those of us that are out there is just making cups of coffee to someone that the next minute will throw it. The other night, this woman, she's young and she's really sick, mentally sick. Like and she's so vulnerable because she's quite attractive, and that she's in danger, but she was really not. Mentally, she's completely, and asking me for a cuppa, and I'd give it to her, and then 2 minutes later she'd tip it on the ground, and then, oh, can I have a cup of Milo? And yes, sure, and then and 5 minutes later tip that one on the ground, and I'm. Oh, patience. We've got this one gorgeous couple, and I don't know. She's blind, and he's a very simple. Anyway, they come this wood person, but honestly, it's like it's every night they'll come and the Milo, one with 3 Milos and 2 sugars, one with 4 Milos. And 3 and 2. Yeah. Anyway, one has 2 and one has 3, or one has 3 and one. And he keeps coming back. And you're busy. You got 10 or 15 people that you're trying to. Oh, can you make me another cuppa? It's this thing called love. We've prostituted it to make it just human niceness. It's really tough. It's Mother Teresa calls it a labour of love. This thing of calling this love thing is not easy. But what Mark has taught me, and my husband has this gift, he'll keep digging and he'll discover the gold. And sometimes that's what I've seen, what we do. In the story of the prodigal son, I'm supposed to let you talk. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. You're doing a great job.
Anyway, the story of the prodigal son. Yeah. I see our call is almost like when he ended up in the pig pen. In the mud. We're there. We're in the mud, and we're trying to say there is someone you can go home to. There is someone that loves you. We're trying to, whether through word, whether through. And we, like I love, I'm not talking about Shalom Media. I don't know if you know Shalom Peter Lyndon James. It's a Christian drug rehab.
Oh yes. He had a show on television a few years ago.
Yes, he was. They did an Australian story on him.
That's right. Yes.
So we're very close to some of the guys there. We've got a worship meeting at Glendalough. You're most welcome to come. If you're into worship, this is really powerful stuff on Saturday morning. Twice a month, and some of the guys come to that, and some of our street people. We've got 2 of our street ladies that now minister with us. Actually one's technically still homeless, but the other one is housed. But they now are auxiliary members of the community, and they're coming out and ministering with us. And they've got so much. They teach me to be compassionate because they know the pain. They know the pain, they know what it's like, and they now speak to us. So would you like to? Questions? Say anything, ask anything. How do you show your love? My first reaction is by being there.
Okay.
by being there. And when you first start, you just feel awkward. It's hard, you know. It's like when you first start, you know, and that's where in some ways people find it much easier to join a ministry which is providing meals. Because it's practical.
Yes, you could do something. You feel as if you're doing something useful.
You're doing something. You know what you have to do. You can dish out the food. You can. When you're suddenly there, and it's well, I've got nothing in common with this person. I've got nothing in my life story. How do I bridge the gap? How do I make connection? But it's only by putting yourself in that situation that you'll develop the skills. But I promise you something. People on the street have learned to read people.
Oh yes, very true.
And they know if you care. They know. They'll test it. They might test it. But they'll know. They'll know if you care. They'll know. And we used to have a lovely Nell, elderly lady. She was coming out well into her, I don't know, she kept coming.
70s.
Well into her 70s. And she was like a grandma. She just rubbed their back and listened to their story and, you know, and Tess is now in her 90s. Tess is now in a nursing home. But Tess, we've got a place in Pemberton. Yes. You know, she had her own cup of tea ministry. There, dear, come and have a cup of tea. You know, so it's about relationship. It's about being family. When they end up in jail, visit in jail. But you're going to feel inadequate. You're going to... the best thing we say to people, though, every 2 months we have these barbecues at McCullum Park, which is... McCullum Park is on the river. Yes. Again, what does family do? Family goes and has a barbecue and a kick of the soccer ball. And so for years now we've been doing these every 2 months, these lunches, which is word of mouth and so on. And we get between 60 to 100 people come along, between volunteers and that's a great opportunity to have exposure. So if you're interested, Easter Monday's our next one. That's, you know, the new people, we get them, you're dishing out food. You're able to see, you know, you're able to, we try and give you more practical things to be able to do, and so on. And
what time are you there in the evening, like, and for how long?
Well, depends on Tuesday or Saturday. Saturday nights, my husband's a night owl. Right. Okay, so he never gets home before midnight, 12:30. Last Saturday was 1:30, you know, so you don't know with Mark, right? Mandy, who's actually in charge of ministry here in Perth, she's from Willerton Parish. She will remember how her and Nell used to get together at certain time. Let's start praying that he goes home. Let's start praying. He was sort of like, oh no, here we go again. He's looking for it. So Mark, I'm not a night owl. I'm a morning person, and Mandy is too. So Mandy, we Tuesday night. 9:30, we're already looking at the clock, and 10 o'clock. Well, we meet at the cathedral. We have prayer at the cathedral. We have a bit of silence. St. Mary's. Yep. We have. This is on Tuesday nights. We meet inside the cathedral. We have a bit of silent prayer, and then we have some worship out on the grounds. If you're not familiar with that, you can just sit there. Maybe you might feel a bit more comfortable, a bit of a distance from us, but you can just sit there and you know, be part of the prayer before we go out. Yeah.
And is that charismatic prayer? Is that what you mean?
Afterwards, yes, but not everyone. So we've also got a category which we call Friends of Holy Spirit of Freedom, and they're people that are not part of Holy Spirit of Freedom community. They've got, but they feel they want to have some involvement, and so they come out once a month. They're on a roster. Usually, most of them are on Saturday nights, but it doesn't matter. And they come out like, you know, I've got, you know, 2 gentlemen that are engineers that have families, but they just feel drawn. So once a month they will come out. And not everyone's Catholic that comes out, not everyone's into the charismatic prayer that comes out. As far as the actual community, you'd have to, if you wanted to be a member, well, you have to put up with the charismatic dimension, because we're charismatic, Eucharistic and Marian. We love Our Lady. We love Eucharistic adoration. We are also very strongly charismatic. see Baldivis is having a Life in the Spirit seminar coming up, and I strongly encourage it. And we're also got a strong ecumenical, because on the streets, the Christians that I have come to know and love and walk beside are our brothers and sisters. And for the sake of the street people, they don't want us arguing. You know, we become a united front. And so we work a lot with our brothers and sisters from other denominations and so on. Yeah. That they may know through our love, you know, Jesus' prayer that, yeah.
So it's only really a sharing time. So, you know, it's not there to kind of like, well, I don't know, answer their prayers or lead them on to...
We're hoping. Our hope is to bring them to Jesus.
Right.
That is definitely our hope.
The ultimate. Yeah.
Ultimate, definitely.
Yes.
And like...
change, you know, out of the darkness.
It's Jesus is the only hope. And to be honest, I would honestly be able to say that the only people that I've known from the streets, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but that have really made broken free of that world, it has been those that have come to faith.
Yeah.
You know, I have to say, I don't know ones that have broken free without Jesus.
Because it's freedom of addictions.
Yes, and it's healing of the heart and the pain and the mental anguish. It's Jesus. So our whole hope is, and our whole desire is Jesus, to bring Jesus. And also within that, you got to discover your own gift. Like some people are more gifted about sharing faith with their words. There was a beautiful man, he's died now, Pio. Pio was a very gentle man. He was in full-time ministry in the Philippines for who knows how long. Pio was very quiet, and here in Australia he wouldn't say much at all. And yet people know that they felt God's presence in him because he was holy, you know. So it's everyone's different. You got to discover your gift and your way. And I guess we call it friendship evangelization, though. We don't feel called like to... and I respect those that do. Some people get out in their soapbox and preach Jesus and with their signs, and I'm not anti that. I think God uses that. God uses he moves in so many different ways. I'm not going to, they're all my brothers and sisters, but our way is more of coming alongside and demonstrating the love of Christ.
Yes.
And building up a trust.
Yes.
See, once there's a relationship of trust,
Yes.
then they're more open to hearing about Jesus. They're more open to, but because so many of them have been so hurt and their trust has been betrayed, and you know they've been so wounded, the whole idea of the friendship evangelization is building up a relationship of trust and love, and then and respect, and then from that, then there's more of an openness to them hearing about Jesus, and because they've also seen Jesus in action, and that's, you know, because they're very intuitive, they can tell when people are fake, you know, they can tell when, you know, you're just full of words, but you're not actually living out what you're talking about. Yeah,
that's right.
Isn't it heartbreaking?
Totally.
Thanks.
Totally. Mark, our poor kids, because we're forever debriefing with each other over dinner, and it's like every now and then the kids say, really, do we have to hear another drink?
How old are your children?
So I had my first child at 38, and I've got a 14. He just turned 19. So I was very blessed. I had 3 healthy children at my age. So my last one was at 42.
Goodness.
So most of people my age are already into grandchildren stage, but I'm still. But God's kept me healthy, so I'm not going to complain, you know.
So what age are they now? 19
So
now?
14, 16 and 19.
And do they want to sort of do what you're doing?
They always come to the barbecues.
Oh,
They
excellent.
love the barbecues.
They like the food?
So they interact with
Yes,
people?
they have
Yes.
a heart. My boy's wild. He's the oldest. He's Joseph the carpenter. We've got our own carpenter. You say?
Yes, thank you.
I don't think he'll be offended if we say that. But he's got a heart of gold. But he's on his own journey, and he comes to our barbecues. The girls love the Lord. and they they love coming to the barbecues, and I think well, you see, we've we've actually had people living with us from the streets. So, like, there's a lady that my children call her their big sister. You know, she lived with us for 6 years. You know, so in very formative years. So that's so the children.
Normal for them.
It's normal.
Yes, they've
It's
grown
normal.
up.
They've grown up with, you know, hearing probably more interesting conversation in our home than on the school grounds, you know. So, you know, so they've just had exposure to the reality of another world.
I've had a bit to do with the Holy Spirit of Freedom from Pemberton,
Oh, okay.
because I was in the Manjimup parish, which is Pemberton as well.
Betty Namnick and
Yes, and Rosemary,
yes.
and Father Robert, or Brother Robert,
Brother
or whatever
Robert,
he is
yeah.
now. He's not
Yeah.
quite Father Robert yet. He's working on it.
Yeah.
But and I worked at St Vincent de Paul, so we used to get a lot of clothing and that. Betty used to collect for the street people.
Yes.
They couldn't be bright coloured. They had to be dark colours, blacks and things, because if they had bright coloured clothes on at night, they'd be easy identified. Whereas they're all dressed in black with hoodies and things. Yes. So I have had a little bit to do with the
That's right.
Holy Spirit of Freedom.
Yes. I remember those bags of clothes we'd get
Yes.
from down in Manjimup.
Yeah, Betty used to check them out first to see if they were right.
No, that's great.
But doing a wonderful job.
Look, we all do our bit, you know, like I said, like I began, we've all got our own little mission, whatever that is. But just if you're interested, like, by all means, we have got a web page, and you know, get in touch, and you know.
Do you find it's getting worse in regards, you know, like, you know, the homelessness and that, like, you know, I have
Drugs
been out
and-
in the night, you know, just going out for dinner, like at Northbridge and things like that, and I do see it, and you know, even in the daytime, you know, it's not a nighttime thing, it's a daytime thing as well.
And the thing that really scares me is, again, the mental health.
Yeah.
It's just, and they're so vulnerable, so vulnerable.
You ready?
Hello, Father.
That's all right. There's no, you're very cosy here.
Yeah.
Do you know that there's a fan here?
Oh.
Open the window.
We've opened the window.
Yeah.
It's all good.
So,
Thank you.
apparently there's a mandatory in all the rooms so that they can be shut up, you know. They're all under control, Elena?
Yeah.
They're putting up with a lot of talking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a big as well. I'll leave you to it.
Do you find that like the council trying harder to try and, you know, like the forces, you know, that they do have some sort of pull and power, you know? Are they just kind of like I heard the Fremantle thing, you know, the TD,
Well, that's homeless
Yes.
people.
you know,
yeah.
but it's like, yeah, you know,
There's
are
no
they coming
easy
to the
solution.
party? Yeah.
There's no easy
I heard
solution.
they're
And
building their
really,
building
I don't.
for the homeless or
Look, there's
something.
a lot that's gone on.
Yeah.
A lot's come on the media, which
Right.
hasn't always been overly accurate, and a lot of politics and people
Yeah.
getting on the bandwagon, and
Do you have any of those counsellors there, you know, in those nights?
no,
or?
we purposely stay under the
Okay,
radar.
right.
Yes.
So because Perth Council, especially towards the end of last year, got very, you had to be registered to
Okay.
provide, if you were a food service, you had to be
Yes.
registered, you had to
Yes.
fill in all this
That's
paperwork,
right.
you had to
Red
sh-
tape.
Where's
Yes.
your legal papers? Where's your
Police clearance and, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
all of that, and we've purposely stayed under the radar. We're not a food service, so we
Yeah.
get away with that. We stopped. We used to have a table at the street doctor. We used to have a table where we'd serve up our tea and coffee. Now we purposely just have a little trolley with a little, you know, urn, which is more discreet, and just stay under
Yeah.
the radar, because look, we haven't got time for administration. No one's getting paid a salary. No, and we're small, and the few of us that have got time to be out there,
Yeah.
we don't want to get caught up with that side of things, you know.
Yeah.
having said that, you know, I remember when I was in the Philippines, because we have got a Philippines ministry.
Goodness. Oh.
And when I was over there, it was interesting because the people would all the time say, the Filipinos that were more well off would say, well, what are you doing out there? Isn't it the government's responsibility?
Yes.
And it's interesting because it was so obvious to me when I was over there that no, the government isn't going to fix this. It's up to you and me.
Yes.
And I think I'd say the same here. There's, you know, when you talk about the Indigenous issue, it's so deep, the wound. It's so complicated. It's so, I think we just have to get out there and love. I don't know if you've read the Pope Francis' Joy of the Gospel. I'd say that's a must. His first encyclical. When I read that, I felt like he broke copyright and wrote about our heart. You know, like he's very passionate, but I think the church, he says, is meant to be a hospital for the sick, and we have to be the change. We have to stop waiting for
Someone else to do it.
It's you and me. That's all God's got. You know, it's you and me that have to leave our security, whatever that is. You know, like Father John spoke about Mother Teresa leaving the security of the convent she was in. But we've all got our securities. We've all got our mindsets that prevent us from risking in love. You know, all of us, we're all scared deep down. You know, relationship is not easy. And, you know, I feel so much for our youth, which are, you know, anyway, I won't go down that bandwagon. But, you know, so my thing is, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to, you know, say the wrong thing at the wrong time. I've got a doctorate in apologising, you know. I do, you know, forever, you know. I'm so sorry. You know, it's true, isn't it?
Not to me,
So, you know, but I think it's having the courage. I think we're in a season that we need, as a people of God, to have the courage to get off our safety zones and actually radically love. Radically love God, radically love others. Our world's in pain, our world's in crisis. And we can't be waiting for someone else. It's you and me. So that's mine.
Do you always work in pairs?
Yes. Very good question, always. Even visits, you know, if we're doing visits, if we're, yes, always in pairs. We'll never go out on the streets by ourselves. It's always in pairs, yeah.
So when you say visits, what, to the home, to a home, or?
Again, relationship based. So, for example, like Mark's known this particular couple who have had their children correctly taken off them, and so they might need help with something. So he'll go over and, you know, particular people that we're in relationship with, and they're now, because in actual fact, the hardest time for people when they've been on the streets a long time, this is, forget about the drug addiction issue, but just homelessness by itself, and they're suddenly housed.
Yes.
It is so hard. Like one of the ladies that's now in our community, she will say it took her 2 to 3 years to stop having a compulsion to go back to the streets. She hated the street life. She will tell you she got assaulted. She hated, but suddenly you're in this little box. You've lost a lot of your skills for coping in society. You haven't got a healthy social network. You're faced with your pain that got you on the street. You've got nowhere to go, nothing to do. So the loneliness, where on the street you're busy surviving. You're at least busy surviving. You know where to go for meals. You develop friendships that you know you're in solidarity with. Suddenly you're in society, but you don't fit in. You're carrying a whole ocean of pain, and that. Does that make, you know? But there's a brilliant Christian doctor in Perth. He's got a service called Homelessness Connect or something. Anyway, for the homeless. And he's brilliant, and he's got, like, with this particular lady, at least 2 or 3 times a week, he had his nurses visiting her because he understands. I mean, there was mental health there as well, but I mean, I always say we're all a bit mad anyway, so it's just, you know, but, so, you know, these nurses were 2 or 3 times a week, then we'd try and provide support the way we could, just to, I don't know how I got onto
Bridge
that,
the gap.
but to support,
Yeah.
visiting in homes.
Yeah, visiting
You know,
homes.
visiting homes, yeah,
Yeah.
very important, yeah. A season in a person's life. Yeah, all sorts of things. A number of people that we know on the streets that they get given a house, and this happens a lot. They get given a house by Homes West, but they're so lonely that they'll invite all their street friends to come and live with them. And before you know it, you've got domestic, you've got violence, and they're being evicted. You know, or some bully has come in and they're getting victimised, and they prefer the streets to having to.
Yeah.
So this is a very common pattern. What's the key there? Loneliness. Loneliness. So lonely.
But they don't have to live on the streets to be just lonely.
No, very
Oh,
true.
no.
You know,
No,
you
very
look at the
true.
homes and
Yes.
who don't get visitors. And
Yeah,
Yeah,
very,
Oh,
very
yeah.
true. It's in all walks of life.
Yeah.
All walks of
Yeah.
life. Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Are they coming from like broken families mainly, or is it just like struggling with home life? I don't know. Yeah.
It's a bit like, to answer that, it's a bit like saying, what are Australians like?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Every
Yeah.
person has their own story. The one word I would say that I would summarise, the people I've known and that we meet, is pain. You've got pain. That's the one thing, you know, there's pain in their lives. A lot of times it's broken relationships. A lot of times. You know, the other week I was sitting there talking to 3 women, and all of them have had their children removed. You know, of course drugs is an issue. Do you want to be straight and have to face the fact that you weren't a good mother, that you weren't able to look after your children? It's pain. It's very raw pain. And when someone said about it's confronting, yeah, it's really confronting, but you haven't, you know, you want to have the magic wand that fixes it all. But sometimes you're just sitting with them in their pain. It's very, very, and that's where our personal prayer life, like we pray over each other before, at the end of every street night, to cut ourselves free of the burdens that we've picked up, because you do, you know, like, you carry it in your heart. But Jesus uses all of that, and he softens our hearts, and he moulds our hearts, and he sets a fire within us that makes us then better lovers in the world that we're in, you know. So
Do a lot of the street people want to be prayed over?
Mark is every Saturday night he's praying with people, but they know him.
Yes.
They know him. They've decided he's Pastor Mark.
Yep.
He's earned their trust. So we'll often be praying with different ones, but mainly ones that we are already in relationships. So yeah, it's but yeah, prayer. We're always happy to pray with people.
Yes.
and so on. But again, it's that trust. When you've got that bit of trust and connection, people are going to be more open to asking for that, and so on. And we're all the time praying, because I personally, I'm totally convicted that there's a spiritual realm, and the demonic is very active. And you know, like there'll be nights that we will be praying because there's violence. You know, there's a fight breaking out at McDonald's. Especially as the night gets later, and you know, someone's going off here, and you know, 1 or 2 of us will just start praying, and you'll just see the atmosphere start to change. You know, so a lot of time we're interceding for what's going on out there. Prayer's powerful. There was one man that used to volunteer with us we used to have ministry houses here in Perth. I don't know if I've got time. I'd love to tell you the story of this one place. When am I meant to finish?
Yeah, just 7 minutes you've got.
Well, there was this one man that volunteered with us. I mean, he's now Clifford, you know, a Mauritius gentleman, And when he came to minister at our ministry house, you always knew you'd have a peaceful day. This man carried peace. He just carried the peace. He again, a man that never spoke a word to anyone, very quiet man.